September 29th, 1833. The royal palace of Madrid lies in deathly silence. In the royal chambers, a 48-year-old man, Ferdinand III, King of Spain, is dying. His body is ravaged by syphilis, contracted through a lifetime of indulgence in countless sexual escapades. He is in agony, his once grand body now consumed by the very pleasures he spent his life seeking. As he lies in bed, doctors frantically try to treat the ulcers covering his body. But the irony is cruel. This king, who once proclaimed himself the defender of Catholic morality, is now being devoured from within by his own debauchery. The man who once terrorized Spain and manipulated its people, now reduced to a pitiful figure in the final moments of his life. Ferdinand III's reign was one of moral collapse, and the end of his life, riddled with pain and disgrace, is the culmination of a life lived without restraint, without regard for morality or decency. But to understand how Ferdinand III became the most perverted king in Spanish history, we must go back to the very beginning and trace the events that set him on this dark path. Born on October 14, 1784, Ferdinand was the son of Charles IV and Maria Luisa of Parma. He grew up in a palace steeped in corruption and intrigue, where sexual scandals and political betrayal were daily occurrences. His mother, Maria Luisa, was notorious for her many lovers, including the powerful Manuel Godoy, who wielded significant influence over the royal family. In this corrupt environment, Ferdinand learned early on that power and pleasure were intertwined, and he quickly began to embrace the most decadent behaviors. By the time he was 10 years old, Ferdinand was already showing signs of a disturbing nature. Accounts from his childhood describe how he found amusement in torturing animals and forcing servants into humiliating acts for his own entertainment. His tutors, alarmed by his behavior, tried to correct him, but their efforts were in vain. Ferdinand dismissed anyone who opposed his desires, and the palace quickly became a haven for his cruelty. As he grew older, Ferdinand's education was a complete failure. Unlike other European princes who received rigorous intellectual training, Ferdinand showed little interest in learning. He rejected his studies, despised art and literature, and showed shocking ignorance about matters of state. His only passion was spying on the intimate activities of courtiers, using holes in the walls of the palace to watch their private lives. At 18, Ferdinand married his cousin, Maria Antonia of Naples. The marriage, intended to civilize him, did the opposite. He subjected his young wife to degrading and humiliating sexual practices, causing her immense psychological trauma. Maria Antonia, an educated and religious princess, soon retreated from her husband, living in seclusion and avoiding his company. The situation only worsened when Ferdinand began using his royal position to coerce women at court into satisfying his perverse desires. He blackmailed ladies-in-waiting, threatening to ruin their families if they refused his advances. Ferdinand took particular pleasure in seducing married women, seeing it as a way to assert control over their husbands. Many noble families were forced to silently accept the dishonor of their wives to maintain their positions at court. In 1806, Maria Antonia died under suspicious circumstances, officially attributed to tuberculosis. However, rumors circulated that she had died of heartbreak due to her husband's relentless abuse. Ferdinand showed no remorse, remarking cynically that her death had freed him to seek new pleasures. The Napoleonic invasion in 1808 should have united Spain, but Ferdinand saw it as an opportunity to further his own interests. During the mutiny that forced his father, Charles IV, to abdicate, Ferdinand demonstrated cowardice. Instead of resisting the French, he secretly negotiated with Napoleon, offering to deliver Spain in exchange for personal guarantees. French witnesses described Ferdinand as despicable, a man willing to sell out his own country to preserve his privileges. During his exile at the castle of Valencia, Ferdinand's behavior only worsened. He lived in luxury on Napoleon's dime, organizing orgies with other Spanish exiles and contracting his first venereal disease. His letters, intercepted by French spies, reveal his obsession with female entertainment. He cared not for the suffering of the Spanish people. His only concern was satisfying his carnal appetites. When Ferdinand returned to Spain in 1814, the situation only worsened. His first act was to restore the Inquisition, not out of religious devotion, but as a means of persecuting his enemies and manipulating women. He used the Inquisition's power to force women to submit to his sexual demands, promising them forgiveness in exchange for their compliance. His second marriage to Isabel of Bonza was even more sordid than the first. Isabel, a Portuguese princess of only 19, was sold by her family to consolidate a political alliance. Ferdinand, now 32 and already marked by depravity, subjected his young wife to even worse abuse than his first. Isabel died young under mysterious circumstances, and once again, Ferdinand showed no emotion. He remarried soon after. His third marriage to Maria Josepha Amalia of Saxony lasted only 2 years before she, too, died under strange circumstances. Ferdinand's wives seemed to die one after the other, victims of the abuse he inflicted on them. Ferdinand's life was one of constant indulgence. He maintained a harem within the palace, forcing women to submit to his desires. His sexual practices were so extreme and perverse that even the relaxed standards of the time were shocked. Secret court documents later revealed his obsession with sadistic rituals and humiliating acts, which he forced on his victims while they were observed by other courtiers. In the 1820s, Ferdinand reached the peak of his depravity. He simultaneously kept dozens of mistresses, including nuns whom he blackmailed into breaking their vows. His obsession with virgins reached disturbing levels. He offered generous rewards to anyone who brought him young, inexperienced women, and desperate families would sell their daughters to him to avoid even worse fates. Meanwhile, Spain's political situation deteriorated. The empire was collapsing. The economy was in freefall. Ferdinand, however, remained oblivious to the national crisis. His only concern was satisfying his ever-growing appetites. In 1829, Ferdinand married for the fourth time to Maria Cristina of Bourbon. By then, Ferdinand was gravely ill, syphilis having begun to destroy his mind and body. His final marriage was the last desperate attempt to produce an heir. Maria Cristina, only 23 years old, was the only wife who survived Ferdinand. But it was only because he was already physically and mentally diminished. By the time of his death in 1833, Ferdinand was a shell of the man he once was. His body, ravaged by syphilis, was covered in grotesque ulcers. He was a pitiful spectacle of moral and physical decay, abandoned by most, even his courtiers avoiding him due to the unbearable stench of his rotting flesh. His doctors, despite all their efforts, could do nothing to alleviate his suffering. When Ferdinand died on September 29th, there were no mourners. The people of Spain were relieved that they were finally free from his torment. His only legitimate daughter, Isabel II, inherited a kingdom in ruins, a nation weakened by her father's debauchery. Ferdinand's legacy was one of depravity, a king who used his power not for the betterment of his people, but to satisfy his own twisted desires. Ferdinand III, the most perverted king in history, died as he had lived, alone, sick, and despised by all. His reign serves as a grim reminder of the destructive power of unchecked vice and absolute power. Even the mightiest monarch can be consumed by their own depravity.